Hello, I'm Solsty and welcome back to Act 4 of the Trial by Felfire, which is the latest in the Hearthstone solo adventures. We'll be fighting Gok Amok, which is the first boss in the fourth act. And Gok Amok, his hero power reads, randomly cast an Outland spell or summon a member of the Rusted Legion. The hero power has changed slightly since Act 3, so now we've got a new hero power, which is +1 attack this turn, or if a friendly minion has attacked, +2. You'll notice here I'm just sort of skipping through this video with Gok Amok. It is quite tempo orientated. He has quite a lot of card draw and will happily just aggressively impact the board. You'll see here we've jumped sort of to the end of the fight. It's very important in this last act, though, to recognise how to use your outcasts correctly. There is quite a lot that's going on in this fight, and the outcasts are incredibly important in the last act, really. This is the last main act to actually get the entire thing completed. I was just reading through a couple of the Demon Hunter spells here because there's a few that I don't use typically, but obviously after playing the Brute there, what happens is after it's attacked, obviously it deals 1 damage to all enemies, which will finish off this fight. But the fight's not particularly difficult, as you can see here. He is casting some spells. He does cast Deep Freeze, for example, for 1 mana. So this is why you want to get this fight finished out as quickly as possible. He has far more resources available to him than you do. I got through really, I snuck through here, though I didn't have a lot of damage left. I'd pushed face very hard, but it seemed to pay off. And I think this is the tactic to go with further on. So without further ado then, that's the first boss, Gok Amok. As I said, we're now moving on to the second, which I think is the most fun, and this is Flick. So Flick on the character screen is fairly basic. Flick's hero power reads, summon a 1/1 worthless imp. What I've noticed here then is that we need to make sure we are preparing a board. So very early on, you get to see Flick. He plays a very standard sort of imp lineup with his constantly playable hero power. These are the same worthless imps that you get if you sense demons without any demons in your deck. I mulliganed here quite heavily because I wanted to make sure I had enough tempo on board, especially early on, versus an imp lineup. What I didn't realise, though, is the mechanic that happens slightly into the fight. So you'll notice here that we're getting our outcast to join us. We're playing through the first few turns with little to no effort, using the new hero power to attack where possible. As you can see here, the worthless imp comes down. I'm currently just building up resources in my hand. I have to say, this is the one fight that I did actually fail first time. It's the only failure that I had in the entire act, of all the acts. As I said, when you first see this character, I did think that it was quite suspect that it was just this character that we were facing down, especially when I saw that he only had 25 health at the start. I was imagining there were going to be some sort of overpowered abilities, but you'll see very quickly here. So what happens is you have the unlikely challenger go off again and plays into the flame imp. This is the exact same opening that Flick had in the first attempt that I had. And you'll see here that you get the chance to play your turn, which is fairly simple. What I did here was build a board, recognising, because I knew what was about to happen, and then you get the Rusted Fel Reaver fall into the fight. The Rusted Fel Reaver's ability reads, your minions have +2 attack, your Fel Reavers have +10. So you can see here instantly has an impact on the board. The issue with this is that you have to save all removal, and this fight is crucial to understand your outcast placing. The benefits you get from the outcast are absolutely massive. So we need to make sure that the outcast that we have available we're using as efficiently as possible. So here I'm just contemplating what to do. I didn't anticipate him getting that sort of the 110 off the top. As you can see here, he had a very good aggro start. He has a lot of health. Because of the way that the fight works, though, what I realised after the first fight, I got within about 10 health of killing him. But what I realised after the first fight is that it's not a race. There's no way that you're going to be able to develop board in this encounter. So what you need to make sure that you do is you need to make sure that you stay solid and keep solid removal in your hand. Because, as you'll see here, when the Fel Reaver comes down, it has 18 attack. So we need to make sure that we are totally able to clear those things as soon as possible. I got very lucky here. I got a 2-drop, which allowed me to play my Outcast. I probably would have wiped again if I hadn't had that. In hindsight, looking back at this now, but this allows me then to go off. He's overdrawing cards and destroying cards, and we skip to the end of the fight. What I've been doing here is just simply playing removal wherever possible. I'm looking here to think, how on earth can I get through this? And then realise that I've got lined up abilities to be able to hit through the taunt and then use the rush minion, the Felfin, into the Fel Reaver. As you can see, though, it got very close still. This is not an easy fight at all, and it will take a little bit of practice to get through. So I'm just at the moment contemplating what to do here to finish it off. What I realise, though, is that after this he'll have no damage at all, so it's best just to clear through the 310 as quickly as possible. As you can see here, he trades off, and that's the game. So anyway, after that we'll move on to part 3, which is Badu. So this leads us on to boss 3, as I just mentioned, which is Badu Prime. Badu Prime is, she was originally the Outcast that was travelling with us in Act 1 and the start of Act 2, I think. And then I believe at the start of Act 2 or Act 3 she decided to leave. What happened, though, is that she was found and she has been transformed by the Legion. So we're currently facing her, and her ability states that after you play a minion, to give it stealth or poisonous. Now, the majority of minions that Badu plays are of a stealth variety. I have to say, of all the fights, I felt this one was absolutely the easiest. Again, all I did was play tempo. I just made good card decisions, made sure I got minions down on board early. But unfortunately, Badu just really doesn't have that much to challenge the board with. Not a lot of removal. I can imagine if you were playing sort of a heavier deck, for example, if you were playing a sort of an end game deck versus Badu, I imagine you'd struggle with large minions. But in this case, we've got a very tempo, very low mana curve deck available to us. So again, just using the Outcasts properly, the hero power properly, will be more than enough to see this fight through. As I was saying, this fight is incredibly simple. We've got now to the point where I'm fighting against her and she has nothing left. It runs out of cards very quickly, doesn't have a lot of resource. Again, though, as you notice in my hand, I have 3 spare weapons. This is because of Outcast placing. The impact that these Outcasts have by placing them properly is effectively the difference between winning very easily in all these encounters and potentially losing. The reason that I lost on the Flick / Fel Reaver combination is because none of my primes and my Outcasts lined up well at all, and I was struggling constantly to try and get them available to use. And without further ado, that's Badu finished, and now we move on to Mecha Jaraxxus, the 4th and final boss in Act 4, and really the final, I would say, proper boss of the Trial by Felfire. This boss is incredibly cool. It has a great mechanic, although it did turn out to not be very challenging. I imagine if this had had a heroic mode, much like other solo adventures, especially the paid ones have, I imagine this would have been an incredibly difficult but incredibly fun encounter to sort of work through. Mecha Jaraxxus has a passive hero power. It's not one that he uses. It's not one that does anything. It literally just triggers every single turn. You'll notice as well on the board at the moment that he has 2 minions that are dormant. So the way that his encounter works is that at the end of his turn, his hero power reads that at the end of his turn, he increases the power of the reactors. Now the reactors are 2 minions that go dormant for 3 turns when killed. They start the game dormant. The one on the left increases spell power every turn, and the one on the right gives minions +1, +1, +2, +2, +3, +3. So the more they get empowered, as you can see here, so it's spell damage +1, and when you summon a minion, give it +1, +1. Now, what happens is they only get empowered by Jaraxxus when they're live. So this means that when they've become non-dormant, at the end of Jaraxxus' turn, that's when you've absolutely got to have the stuff on board. So making sure here that we keep really, really high control of the board, because as soon as these things become dormant, we need to kill them off. As you can see here, instantly they've played quite an aggressive start. Jaraxxus' entire build is based around making sure that you can't get to his reactors. Now, obviously, we're not going to allow that to happen. And as you can see, one's a 0-3, which is the spell power one, and one's a 0-2, and that instantly affects. And then at the end of the turn, they get empowered and spell damage +2. So that also means that the minions that they spawn are going to do +2, +2. I believed at the start that it was only empowering one of the reactors, because it looks like the animation only goes off on the green one. However, I almost fell very far behind at this point, and I kind of made a pretty drastic mistake, I felt. So what I've chosen to do here is make sure the reactor gets killed off, so it doesn't become a +3, +3, and then to keep tempo on board. The scrap imps can be a bit annoying, but obviously maintaining that nothing stays on board makes it very simple for you. The deck itself is the same sort of standard variant that we've had throughout the campaign. So I'm just, again, like I said, staying on top of board, putting down champions. I probably would have saved that removal in future, looking back now. I got very lucky here, which is what actually helped me to finish off this encounter. So I'm looking at the Imprisoned Antaean, sort of the Outcast, whether I can play that, and then I'm just trying to work my way around how I'm going to get rid of the 10-5. Luckily, as I said, that I had a couple of breaks in this fight, but overall it's just a tempo-orientated encounter, and it is a really fun encounter, I have to say, for the end of this act. You'll notice here that I look at the pit commander, and this is actually the turn that I was very fearful that I think if I'd fallen any further behind this turn, I think this is where I would have lost the game. As you can see here, this the effect of the Endless Legion there is really dangerous. So make sure to keep your removal in hand. I was getting very fearful, as I said, of losing at this point. I didn't feel like I had any chance of coming back from this. But yeah, so I played the pit commander, which got everything sort of taken out. I then managed to get to the end. As you can see there, I've been holding the Outcast for pretty much the entire fight. Just because at the time there was no way of playing it, there was no way of it impacting the board. I'm lucky now, I've managed to get on board. I've got a Wind Fury, and I've got the +8 attack in my hand, so this is a very easy win out here. But as I said, the fight itself is very interesting. It's a great sort of end to a solo campaign, and actually it's probably the most enjoyable fight, I would say. There's a lot to manage, there's a lot to think about, but if you are struggling with it, what I would say is just make sure you maintain as much as possible. And again, as I said, with all of these acts, make sure you stay on top of your Outcast usage, because they are crucial to winning the fights. The first couple of acts are fairly simple. These acts rely heavily on the Outcasts and their sort of overpowered abilities to be able to carry you through to the end. That's been Act 4. I've been Solsty. Thank you very much. If you like the content, please like and subscribe. Cheers.